The Seattle Mariners, stacked with talent and in the playoffs for the very first time in their 19-year history, are taking on the big bad Yankees in the 1995 American League Division Series. Game 5, bottom of the 11th. The tying run is 90 feet away. The winning run is on first, and the future of Seattle baseball hangs in the balance of this one at-bat. Edgar Martinez is at the plate. He swings, and... you know what? I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's back up.
Let's go back to 1969, a year of change in the MLB. Organized baseball is in its 100th year of existence. The league has a new logo created by Jerry Dior. The pitching mound is getting lowered thanks to the dominance of Bob Gibson, among others, in 1968. And for the first time, the city of Seattle would have an MLB franchise. In 1967, the MLB wanted to create a rival on the Pacific Coast for the California Angels, who geographically didn't really have anyone close to them. So two guys, Dewey and Max Soriano, went to work to try to convince the league that Seattle would be the best place to set up shop.
Dewey was a former pitcher for the Seattle Rainiers in the Pacific Coast League. Max worked as legal counsel for the PCL. They brought out Mickey Mantle, Carl Yastrzemski, Jimmy Piersall, and American League President Joe Cronin to seduce the city. The final piece of the puzzle was former Cleveland Indians owner William R. Daley, who had wanted to move the Indians to Seattle a few years earlier, but was talked out of it. Daley joined the ownership group, and King County promised to build a dome stadium for the new team.
The Seattle Pilots joined the league in 1969 along with the Kansas City Royals, the San Diego Padres, and the Montreal Expos. They played in the Rainiers' old stadium, Six Stadium, and it's just a dump. I mean, they sink $2.85 million trying to fix that place up with seats, lights, a new scoreboard, but it's like putting lipstick on a pig. Like, it's just a lost cause.
The Pilots, like most expansion teams, were awful in their first season. Attendance was low, but not to a point where business was unsustainable. They drew almost 678,000 fans, which outdrew the White Sox, Phillies, Indians, and Padres that year. But the team was losing money left and right, and attendance plummeted as the season wore on.
What's worse is that lawsuits are holding up construction of the domed stadium, and stockbrokers are starting to get a little worried. Daley makes a public demand that if fans don't start coming to games, the team is going to have to move. I'll let you guess how that one worked out.
Drowning in money woes and their owner not wanting to pay, the team entered spring training as the Pilots and left as the Milwaukee Brewers, owned by future league commissioner Bud Selig.
Local governments were furious. Washington State sued the American League for $32 million. $40 million had already been allocated in municipal bonds to help build the dome stadium, plus the extensions already made to the original ballpark. They were about to lose a metric butt-ton of money. Thus began the legal mess known as the State of Washington versus the American League of Professional Baseball Clubs, filed in 1970 and taken to trial in 1976.
Washington State claimed that the AL entered a contract by campaigning to vote yes on the new club, plus contributing money to the stadium efforts and also some antitrust stuff that I don't really understand. But that's okay, because even the court didn't seem to understand it. The court summation says that the allegations are, quote, long, elaborate, and not easy to summarize. A legal tour de force. But the whole contract thing was nailed down by quoting AL President Cronin when he said, quote, "The American League is in Seattle to stay, given a place to play."
The trial wore on for 20 days, and Seattle was actually kind of winning, which surprised a lot of people, including the plaintiffs.
Washington Attorney General Slade Gorton,
which is a killer attorney name, by the way,
was doing legal jujitsu, and the AL was in trouble. But really, people just wanted it to be over. The new Kingdom had been finished for 2 years, and the NFL's new team, the Seattle Seahawks, were set to play in their first game there that season.
The AL eventually promised the city a team if the suit was dropped. They offered up the White Sox and Giants as compensation, and it was rumored they also offered up the A's as well, who had just landed in Oakland in 1968. Eventually, an expansion team was awarded to the city, and the Seattle Mariners began play in 1977.
The Mariners formed for just north of $5 million and played in the Kingdome. And again, they were terrible. After 4 seasons and 400 losses, the Mariners were sold to George Argyros before the 1981 season for $13 million.
To put that in perspective, $35.5 million would be just enough to afford Clayton Kershaw, the highest paid man in baseball right now. That is until Bryce Harper signs. If he signs. Funny world we live in.
Speaking of funny, George Argyros was a clown. He pretty much immediately hated ownership of the team. He filled the front office with his business buddies, constantly threatened to leave Seattle, and by his 6th year of owning the team, he already wanted out. When the Kingdome runs into a scheduling error between the Mariners and Seahawks in the mid-'80s, Argyros has had enough. He threatens to move the team to Denver. And when that doesn't work, he announces that he's selling the team and buying the Padres. He even calls Padres manager Larry Bowa after a win.
He didn't have an agreement. The Padres had already said no and cut off negotiations. So, there was no reason for him to call. He just wound up calling an opposing manager. George, you can't do that. So George gets hit with a fine for tampering, obviously. And he's removed from day-to-day operations from the club by the league commissioner. The state threatens legal action if he moves the team away from Seattle. So George is left stuck with a bad team that he hates, that he can't move, and he can't sell, and he won't spend money on because he can't run it. What a cluster.
That same year, he tells his staff to draft pitcher Mike Harkey first overall in the amateur draft. His scouts beg him to go in a different direction. He's skeptical and bitter, but is overruled by the general manager and the scouting staff. Harkey falls to 4th overall, and Seattle drafts a high school outfielder named Ken Griffey Jr. Injuries would derail Harkey's career within a few years. Finally, August 1989, after 3 years of trying, Argyros sells the team. The Mariners have still not had a winning season. In 2011, he was named the 4th worst owner in MLB history by ESPN. They wrote, he couldn't tell a ball player from a fire hydrant.
So along comes Jeff Simoleon, who purchases the Mariners for $76 million in October of 1989, which, in case you were wondering, would be worth $156 million today, which would have been 11th last year in payroll, sandwiched above the Mets and below the Mariners. Simoleon tries some weird promotions, like guaranteed no-hitter night. If neither team throws a no-hitter, attendees get their tickets for $4.50. And as luck would have it, he schedules it for a night that Nolan Ryan is pitching against the Mariners. What kind of P.T. Barnum huckster shit is that? It's just, step right up, ladies and gents. Watch our team suck harder than anyone else. This is the lamest show!
Gimmicks aside, things are finally starting to make a lick of sense in Mariners baseball. Ken Griffey Jr. finishes 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting in 1989. That same year, the Mariners take a chance trading away their ace, strikeout fiend Mark Langston, to Montreal in exchange for 3 prospects, including solid depth starter Brian Holman and a young flamethrower with a mean mug and no control, Randy Johnson. In 22 starts in 1989, Johnson is better, but still not great. He's walking a lot of batters and throwing a few comical wild pitches, but he's got promise.
I, for example, have a paper route.
And that's not the only trade that's panning out. In 1988, the Mariners traded an aging Ken Phelps for a hot young prospect, Jay Buhner. He starts getting at-bats in 1989 and OPS is .893. Not bad.
What the hell did you trade Jay Buhner for? He had 30 home runs, over 100 RBIs last year. He's got a rocket for an arm. You don't know what the hell you're doing.
By January of 1990, there are rumors that a Japanese conglomerate wants to buy the team from Simoleon. That's absolutely, totally preposterous, he says. We have no interest in selling this team. We just bought it. I mean, he's got a point. That season, Griffey Jr. is an all-star. So is Randy Johnson. Their young third baseman, Edgar Martinez, is getting a full-time shot at the hot corner. He makes 27 errors in 1990, but man, can he hit the crap out of the ball. Harold Reynolds is a legit player over at second base. The Mariners pick up Ken Griffey Sr. in the summer of 1990, and he starts to rake. He hits .377 as a Mariner in 22 games. He and his son hit back-to-back home runs in September. It's one of the most incredible feats in sports history when you really think about it. Even though they have a losing record yet again, the team is, at the very least, watchable for the first time in a long time, maybe ever.
Then in 1991, the unthinkable happens. The Mariners have a winning season! Oh! They win 83 games. They're 12 games out of the postseason, but who cares? There's life. And as the team gets better, salaries rise. In 2 years, payroll tripled from $8 million to $23 million, and attendance doubled. But revenue still wasn't enough. As it turns out, owners each individually had to pay about $10 million from a players' union lawsuit, and creditors were starting to demand payments on a loan that Smolian took out to purchase the team in the first place. Jeffy was backed into a corner. The only way out of this hole was to either sell the team, again, or refinance and move.
In August of 1991, the Seattle Times reported that Smolian was mulling a move to Tampa Bay. Smolian denied it at first, but within a year, the team was officially listed for sale with an asking price of $100 million. $183 million in today's money, 6th highest payroll. There's a 120-day deadline given to local investors by the Kingdome's lease. If a buyer is not found, the Mariners are on their way to Florida.
By God, that's Slade Gordon's music! Yes, it is Slade Gordon, now senator for the state of Washington. The attorney general who helped baseball return to Seattle 15 years ago is back and stepping up to the plate once again, pun fully intended. He begins calling local businesses and investors, trying to cobble together some kind of group to help keep the Mariners in Seattle, like he's Vin Diesel in the Fast and Furious movies. We're gonna need a crew.
On December 23rd of 1991, he got a phone call from the CEO of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi. He ponies up the full $100 million. He wasn't even a baseball fan. He had never been to a game. He just liked Seattle. He had moved Nintendo's offices from New York to Seattle in the mid-'80s, had a few gajillion dollars to spend from the recently dropped Super Famicom, soon to be SNES in the States, and wanted to show local pride. What a guy.
So Gordon's ecstatic. He starts rounding up minority owners to join in the bid, but he knows that it's going to be an uphill battle because at this point, baseball is highly opposed to foreign majority leaders, and US-Japan relations at this point in history virtually non-existent.
Yamauchi's presence in the bid nearly sinks the deal. Commissioner Fay Vincent calls the bid unlikely. The league tries to argue that a foreign owner might spend too much on free agents, jacking up prices and ruining their whole collusion scheme that they had going in the 80s into the 90s. After tense xenophobic negotiations, the sale is approved, but only if Yamauchi takes 49% while still footing 60% of the bill. Controlling interest was given to one of the minority owners, John Ellis. Yamauchi is told that he can't participate in day-to-day operations, and he doesn't care. He's happy the team is staying. For someone once named the most feared man in video gaming, he's incredibly nonchalant despite getting shafted.
The ownership committee votes unanimously to approve the sale. One member refuses to cast a vote. And that man is Jeff Smolian. Smolian, on his way out, admits that he wound up losing $10 million in 1991 from owning the Mariners, and says that Seattle might not be a baseball town. Amid the ownership battle of 1992, the team flounders. They fired their manager before the season, they lose 98 games, they fire their new manager after just 1 year, and out of desperation, they lure 1990 World Series champion manager Lou Piniella away from the Cincinnati Reds.
1993, the first full year of new ownership. The city breathes a sigh of relief as management declares the Mariners safe at home. The Mariners go 82-80, but attendance eclipses 2 million for just the second time. the team's payroll skyrockets to over $33 million, the most it's ever been in franchise history. Ken Griffey Jr. slugs 45 homers and finishes 5th in MVP voting. Randy Johnson wins 19 games and strikes out 308 hitters, losing the Cy Young to 22-game winner Jack McDowell.
The next year is going to be huge for the Mariners' development. So it's August 11th, 1994. The Seattle Mariners have a pretty bad record at 48-63, but they just swept the Texas Rangers, so they're really only 2.5 games back for the division lead. Randy Johnson goes the distance, strikes out 15 batters to beat the Oakland Athletics. Ken Griffey Jr. leads the American League with 40 home runs through 111 games. There's a legitimate chance that he breaks the single-season home run record. He's on pace to do it. And they're only 2 games back now with the win for the American League West. They've won 6 in a row. And then the strike happens. And it sucks, and it hurts everyone. Everyone loses money. Fan attendance drops, and it doesn't come back to where it was before the strike for another decade. And it costs something that no other strike had ever cost us before, which is a World Series. And the 2 teams that it hurt most were the Montreal Expos and the Seattle Mariners. So now it's 1995, baseball's back, but guess what? We got more BS to deal with because the lease on the Kingdome only has 1 more year left on it. So now the team once again has to worry about where they're going to be playing their games next year. Relocation rumors are once again on the rise, only this time voters are not as gung-ho about keeping the team.
The closest taste of success that they've gotten is Ken Griffey Jr. robbing that home run at the end of Little Big League.
Spoiler alert. Sorry.
August 20th, 1995. A vote looms on the horizon in King County as to whether or not the team will get public funding for a new stadium. If they don't get it, the Mariners pack their bags. The M's drop 2 of 3 to the Red Sox and are now 53-53, trailing the California Angels by 12.5 games. Things look bleak, and it looks like another amazing statistical year out of their star players will be wasted. But then something happens. The Mariners get Ken Griffey Jr. back from injury and for once are buyers at the deadline. They bring in closer Norm Charlton, starter Andy Bennis, and speedy Vince Coleman for the outfield. California gets swept by the Red Sox, then drop 3 of 4 to the Angels. The Mariners take 3 of 4 from the Yankees to pull within 9.5 games with 23 to play. Still a huge margin. Then the Angels get swept by Boston again. And the Yankees. They lose 9 in a row. And 12 of 13. By September 13th, the Angels' division lead is 6 games with 17 to play, and the surging Mariners are leading the wild card. California finally snaps a 2-14 skid by winning 4 of their next 5. Perhaps the train is back on the rails, and the Mariners truly are doomed. Wrong, that train goes careening off the tracks in a fiery blaze. Casey Jones, you better watch your speed, because they lose 9 more in a row starting that day. Seattle goes 8-1 in that same stretch. The world barely has time to blink, but the Seattle Mariners are now leading the division in September for the first time in franchise history.
But we're not done. We're not done, because the Angels win 5 of their last 6 to salvage their season, and the Mariners, with their magic number at 1, get blown out in their last 2 games of the year. The Yankees, meanwhile, finish their season 11-1 to steal the wild card away. The Mariners' only playoff hope lies in a 1-game playoff with the Angels for the AL West title. Winner plays the Yankees in the ALDS. This will prove to be the second most important game in Seattle Mariners history.
A series of coin tosses determined that the tiebreaker game would be played in Seattle at the Kingdome, where the days are numbered. The Mariners send out Randy Johnson, the 1995 Cy Young Award winner. Johnson went 17-2 that year, the best win percentage by a lefty ever. He hadn't lost since August 1st.
Here's the thing about Randy Johnson. he's cooler than you. I don't care what you've done in your life or what you will do with your life, you will never be as cool as Randy Johnson. Opposite Randy Johnson on the hill for the Angels is son of a bitch, Mark Langston. How's that for serendipity? I mean, the man who could end the Mariners' postseason hopes is the same guy they traded away for Randy Johnson that helped spark Seattle's turnaround. It's like something out of a 90s sports movie. Mark Langston is, for all intents and purposes, Jack Parkman. Now, it goes without saying, obviously, but this had to go well for the Mariners. This was their only shot at saving the team.
Back on September 19th, the day the Mariners had cut the division deficit to just 1, King County voters shot down a tax proposal for a new baseball stadium. The owners threatened to sell the team if a new stadium is not approved. The Mariners appear to be at a dead end once again. A second vote is scheduled for mid-October, which now is only weeks away. October 2nd, over 52,000 people flood the Kingdome to watch this one-game playoff. The loser goes home, which, if things go wrong, who knows where that would be for the Mariners. It's the bottom of the 5th. Randy Johnson has yet to allow a base runner. Mark Langston is matching him inning for inning, but the Mariners are threatening. With 2 on and 1 out, Vince Coleman singles home Dan Wilson. Randy keeps cruising. He's got 11 strikeouts through 7 innings. Now the bases are loaded in the bottom of the 7th with 2 outs. Langston has thrown over 100 pitches. This is probably his last batter. Stepping in is Luis Sojo, the Mariners' shortstop. Sojo saws his bat on a ground ball to first right over the bag. JT Snow is at first, and he's just won the first of what will be 6 straight Gold Gloves that year. To get through, this will have to be perfectly placed.
Now the broken bat. It's fair! Flowers has scored. Chino Martinez has scored. And they all have scored! And here comes Sojo! Save!
Langston lays on the ground for almost 10 seconds. After the bases were cleared, his relay to the plate sailed to the backstop, allowing Sojo to come all the way around for a Little League, inside the park, grand slam. The Mariners lead 5-0. The M's tacked on 4 more runs in the 8th. Randy Johnson throws 125 pitches and goes the distance. He strikes out 12 and allows just 3 hits. The Wild Thing walks just 1 batter. The Seattle Mariners were playoff bound for the first time ever.
But this was not the end. Making the playoffs is very good, but not enough to salvage an entire franchise. Now you had to take it a step further and actually win a playoff series. Now, per MLB rules at the time, the team with the superior record didn't get games 1, 2, and 5 like they do now. Instead, they got games 3, 4, and 5. So, theoretically, the wildcard team could put the team with the superior record up against the ropes with home wins in games 1 and 2, which is exactly what the New York Yankees did.
The Yanks beat the tar out of reliever Bobby Ayala, and even though the Mariners get the tying run to the plate in the 9th, the Yanks take Game 1. Game 2 goes to extras. Junior hits a dinger in the 12th, but Ruben Sierra ties things up with a double. Bernie Williams is thrown out at the plate trying to score the winning run, and we get more baseball. Finally, in the 15th, Jim Leyritz hits a 2-run homer off of Tim Belcher in his 4th inning of work. The Mariners are on the cusp of losing their first playoff series without so much as a single win.
I mean, it can't end like this. After 19 years of trying to make this stupid team work, years of sucking and slowly and laboriously amassing this core of Hall of Fame caliber talent, some of the best to ever play the game, this team is finally making a final stand in the fight for its life. And you know what's wild is that for once, it is not because the owners want to bail. It is not because the front office is incompetent or uncaring or lusting after another city or another team. They want to and can afford to stay. But the people of King County have demanded a return on their investment. The Mariners would have 3 chances to give it to them with 0 room for error. And here's one last final thing, and I can't emphasize this enough. Randy Johnson is cooler than you.
Randy Johnson strikes out 10 and Tino Martinez homers off of Jack McDowell to keep Seattle alive in Game 3. Then in Game 4, the Mariners come back from down 5-0 and are batting in the bottom of the 8th, game tied at 6. Vince Coleman draws a walk, then Joey Cora beats out a bunt single with some creative maneuvering of the baseline. Griffey is hit by a pitch. Edgar Martinez belts a grand slam.
Fastball swung on it to deep center field. Bernie Williams goes back, and it is get out the rye bread and the mustard this time, Grandma. It is a grand salami.
It's his second home run and 7th RBI of the game. Seattle wins 11-8. There will be a Game 5.
Decision time in the Great Northwest.
Sunday, October 8th. About 57,500 people pack the Kingdome. David Cone and deadline acquisition Andy Bennis are the starters. Joey Cora belts a solo shot to give the Mariners an early lead. It's the only playoff home run he'll hit in his career in 118 plate appearances. We've reached peak postseason silliness where literally anyone can be the hero. It's 4-3 Yankees in the 8th inning. Junior has hit his 5th home run of the series, the 22nd by either side. It's a new MLB record for most combined home runs in a series. This is bananas. The Mariners load the bases on David Cone. Young setup man Mariano Rivera is loose in the pen, but Cone gets one more batter. Pinch hitter Doug Strange draws a walk. It's tied. Top 9. Tony Fernandez leads off with a double. Randy Velarde walks. Lou Piniella goes to the bullpen. Randy Johnson comes in the game. It's his first relief appearance all year and just the 3rd of his career. He gets Wade Boggs, Bernie Williams, and Paul O'Neill 1, 2, 3.
Randy Johnson is cooler than all your mother flippers!
Mariano gets into trouble to start the bottom of the 9th, but Buck Showalter decides to take a page from Lou Piniella's book and bring in his ace, Jack McDowell. He retires Edgar Martinez and a 20-year-old rookie taking his first ever postseason at-bat after pinch running earlier in the game. Yeah, him, Alex Rodriguez. Randy strikes out the side in the 10th, and McDowell once more dances through raindrops, stranding the winning run on second. In the top of the 11th, Randy Johnson finally allows a base runner, a leadoff walk to Mike Stanley. A bunt gets him over, and Randy Velarde, who dominated Johnson his whole career pretty inexplicably, singles him home. The Yankees finally have the upper hand on the big unit. He strikes out Jim Leyritz and Paul O'Neill, but the damage is done. The Mariners are 3 outs from elimination, chasing 1, facing the 1993 Cy Young Award winner.
But hey, McDowell has looked fallible tonight, and really his entire career in the postseason. Never say never, right?
Joey Cora leads things off and lays down a perfect bunt again. This time he only dodges the tag by a slim margin, again thanks to some baseline finagling. Ken Griffey Jr. wraps a single past a diving second baseman. Thank God for lively Kingdome turf. Runners on the corners for the best hitter in the American League. Edgar Martinez led the league with a .356 average and 52 doubles. He finished 3rd in the MVP vote, robbed of the award by Mo Vaughn. To this point, he's hitting .550 in the postseason with 8 RBIs. Make no mistake, there's no one else in baseball you'd rather have up in this moment than this man.
So here we are. Years and years of suckitude, legal battles, ownership turnover, financial struggles, drama, rumors. It is all built to this moment. Seemingly the entire city has packed into the Kingdome and is ready to explode. A vote on the team's future will be held 1 week from this night. All eyes are on this moment. Take it away, Edgar.
And the 0-1 pitch on the way to Edgar Martinez. Swung on the line down the left field line for a base hit. Here comes Joy. Here is Junior to third base. They're going to wave him in. The throw to the plate will be late. The Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship. I don't believe it.
The Seattle Mariners lost to the Cleveland Indians in 6 games in the ALCS. Broadcaster Dave Niehaus said that fans stayed around in the Kingdome and gave the Mariners a 15-minute standing ovation after the game. The city had fallen in love with their team once again. It's one of the most romantic storybook moments in sports.
Really think about this. A consistently failing franchise amidst relocation rumors gets off to a really crappy start, then sparks an unbelievable turnaround thanks to a flamethrowing ace with control issues, a speedy outfielder, a defensive liability at third base, late-game heroics from a right-handed power hitter, leading them to a 1-game playoff using bunt tactics to beat the Yankees, ultimately lose in the ALCS, but it's enough to keep the team in the home city. I mean, who would script that? The bottom line is the city of Seattle got what it wanted, and eventually, so did the Mariners.
October 15th, 1995, the state government narrowly approves funding for a brand new ballpark for $320 million. Safeco Field. The Mariners have their new forever home. The magic of 1995 has saved baseball in Seattle for the long haul.
Fly ball belted to deep left center field.